Can you hear me? Good.
All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get rolling on 3 of 3. This is NFT and Web 3.0.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned, these are kind of building on, the initial series. What I will do at the end of the class is I'll send you guys the recording and PowerPoint just like we have in the past. And then, based on our earlier conversation about getting a little blockchain group, meetup group, this will be in January sometime. So everybody on this list, what I'm going to do is just kind of send it to everybody who's attended some of the more technical classes and that kind of thing. So that way it's on your radar. If you want to come out, come out. We're probably going to limit it to 25 people just initially. So I would say that when you do get a certain client, try and do it sooner rather than later. The other thing I will tell you, this is not about, and this is where we're a little different from an academic setting. This is more driven by what you want to hear. Not about what we want to offer you. It's really what you want. So I would not be shy in saying, listen, this is of no value to me, but this would be. And if 4 or 5 people say that, then it kind of gets on my radar. Everybody's got an opinion about stuff. But I think that's what we do. Just kind of take that feedback. So don't be, with these classes, Tom's available to you, on LinkedIn. That's why we put it out there. So just kind of ping him as needed. But if there's a small subgroup that wants to get together and talk about something specifically and understand, we need to bring somebody in with some level of expertise, we're happy to do that. So with that said, I'll follow up with you guys on an email. A couple of new faces. Dave, I guess you kind of, is that you found about it through Andy?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And saying, what's in your interest?
I'm in the insurance space.
Yeah.
And just, we attended a conference a couple months ago, and it's just, blockchain is going to revolutionize the whole insurance space. And we were in a meeting of probably, I was in this one particular session with probably 200 or so of the top underwriters.
Yep.
And their pushback when this topic was brought up on a breakout session was, I've never seen a pushback greater in any conference I've ever been. Probably a group of 50 walked out. They were just, how is this going to completely, why do we need to learn this? Why are we in here? This is going to get rid of us, in a sense. And that was the animosity level in that room. And these are the top underwriters for their companies in probably the nation, if not world.
I mean, tech has moved to insurance in a big way. I mean, the whole actuarial sciences is now being taken over machine learning and AI. So, I mean, I get that concern, but you got to keep an open mind. So I appreciate you being here. And then we have one more new face. So, your interest, obviously.
Oh, I'm a CFO consultant, and I've been working on a blockchain project for 3 years with one of my clients. And just, I just have a huge interest in it.
Yeah, that's great.
From a business perspective, more than
Okay.
a coding perspective. I just thought it would be helpful to connect with
Good. Yeah, I think that, I like to tell people we don't really go into spaces that are kind of, where other people are already doing some things. So since nobody's doing this, we'll make this kind of ground zero for these conversations, bring the experts in, on that as-needed basis. And so your feedback is kind of valuable to that extent. And I do agree, it was interesting. Tom's a technical guy, so he'll basically go down the rabbit hole. But so let's just make it a little more business-oriented, that kind of thing. So, but these things can get more technical, as technical as you need them to be. So appreciate you being here. That said, I'll let you
All right.
take it away. Thanks, Tom.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ernest. Thanks, guys. I'm super excited about today. Really, part 1 and part 2 was really to get to talk about today, because this is where a lot of the neat stuff are happening. But before we kind of dive in, we'll do a review from 1 and 2 just to refresh some neurons since it's been a week. And then we'll jump into Web3 and try to answer that. You'll find that there's a lot of hype out there for what it is, and there's going to always be this question: what is Web3? And it was very similar with Web 2. What was Web 2? And then it was very similar with the web. What was the web? But we'll try to answer that, and maybe you guys can provide some, other views to that, because I definitely don't necessarily have the right view, and I don't think a lot of people do. And then we'll just go through some use cases. So, one of the things I think that's helpful is, well, it's one thing to talk about what if, right? What if this stuff can be, but what is it actually being used as today? And really talk through some of those, and I think that'll resonate hopefully a little bit. And then we'll talk about DAOs, our decentralized autonomous organizations, maybe explain some of the potential, maybe explain some of the use cases there. And then at the end of this slide deck, have a huge list of resources and references. There are a bunch of links, but I may talk about some of those if there's time. And again, happy to address any questions if I didn't cover something that you're really curious about and want to talk about. So keep that open so that we can cover everything that we can try to cover today. And with that, we'll go through some review. We've talked about the blockchain. We talked about smart contracts and oracles, kind of fungible tokens, layer 1 and layer 2, and some exchanges like code-based Gemini, but some decentralized exchanges like Serum or Radium, and there's some others out there as well. So just excuse my drawings, but I wanted to put some drawings up, and they're awful, but they're meant to be awful to try to just keep it. If you look online for drawings about the blockchain, there's super noisy ones that are hard to understand, and then there's some really good ones, but I wasn't sure of copyright, so I got my daughter to draw these. No, I did. So let's walk through kind of the blockchain in terms of Bitcoin at a kind of a very high level, just to refresh everyone. The first thing, I've got a wallet and I've got some Bitcoin in it, and I want to send some to Trip. So I'm going to send it, and I'm going to basically sign it with my digital signature, this transaction, this request to send 1 Bitcoin to Trip. And then I'm going to submit that to the network, and the network is going to include that into a block of transactions, which is just a batch. And at that point, all of these miners, every 10 minutes or every 20 minutes, they're going to compete to be able to write that block of transactions into the database or into the ledger. And there's only one winner. One winner out of this whole network of servers wins the ability to write the block. And then they write it, and at the same time, send it to all the other miners or nodes to validate that that was correctly done. And once they validate that, they reach a consensus, and they all update their copies of that database with that new block. And by magic, Trip's wallet now has 1 extra Bitcoin. Good? Cool. So that's kind of the blockchain walkthrough. Now, we talked about smart contracts, and I'll try to add smart contracts on the same workflow. So I want to send a transaction. That transaction could be send 1 ETH to Tyler, or that transaction could be, create a token, or it could be send multiple tokens to multiple people. It could be essentially executable code that does something. So I think we used the example of a counter where we just increment state on the blockchain. So every time I send a transaction, it just increments that counter from 0 to 1, then 1 to 2, to 2 to 3. You'll notice the same flow is kind of there. The transaction goes into a block of transactions. The miners solve a puzzle. The winner actually executes the code from the input of that transaction. So this code is stored on the blockchain, they execute it, and then they write the block as a result. And all the miners validate, and then the transaction is received as successful. In this case, it could be, send some layer 2 tokens like a BAT token or a USDC token, or it could be to send ETH or a layer 1 token, or it could be just to increment a counter, or it could be just run this code. So it's the same flow, but it includes this idea of a smart contract. So far, so good? Everybody good with that? Cool. Okay. So NFTs. Does anyone want to take a stab at a definition of an NFT? Non-fungible token? Okay, I'll try. Unique? Yep. It's unique, and it's not one-to-one with exchange, right? So if I have an NFT and you have an NFT, they're not necessarily equal in value, right? Each NFT can represent a unique store of value or a token. So there's standards out there, in Ethereum is probably the most popular standard, but basically it's a smart contract on the blockchain, and just like we were talking about layer 2 tokens where we could mint a token and put a supply of tokens in, but all those tokens kind of mimic currency. That they mimic that if I put a million tokens in this pool, that they're all the same value. Whereas if I mint an NFT, it's unique. It is a singularity in value, right? There can only be one. Multiple people can own that, but there's only one token, one supply. So some of the use cases, if you think about when you own property, you have a deed. When you own a car, you have a title, right? The title is not the car, but it represents that you own the car. A token is very much that in the digital world, right? The token could point to a physical asset. It could point to physical property, but represent that you own that physical property. The owner of the token owns that. It could point to art. Digital art is the bubble we're in right now, right? A lot of use cases where you see these little crypto punks, cyberpunks, all of these things being sold as NFTs. And the NFT is just a token that points to that image. And it represents that, Tyler owns that image. But that doesn't stop anybody else from copying that image and using it, right? But Tyler can prove that he owns those bytes with his NFT. Music. Again, you're starting to see some artists actually, sell royalties in the terms of NFTs for revenue that their music may generate. So an NFT can act as a share kind of a particular contract. And the interesting thing about it is it really is just this digital kind of title or deed to some sort of asset or property. It's a link that ties an owner to an asset. Any questions about that? So one thing that's kind of neat about that is that, let's say, Richard created some incredible art, and he's going to put it on the marketplace, and he wants to make sure that every time it's sold that he gets a royalty. So he can embed in the NFT a transaction, and every time that NFT or that art gets sold from buyer to buyer to buyer, every transaction he gets 4%. So now he, as the artist, if it gets sold for $1 to the first owner, and then that owner sells it for $2, and then that owner sells it for $4, every single time he's getting a percentage of that transaction to his wallet. So that's kind of unique. Whereas, like, if you have a title to a car, you sell that title to someone, and then they sell that title to someone, and then they sell that title to someone, the original title holder doesn't get a percentage of that, right? It just transfers one-to-one. So NFTs are very powerful in that kind of way, that they can represent unique assets, but then they can have a set of rules that explain how transactions are conducted through the exchange of ownership from one person to another.
And that's where the industry disruption comes in, right? Because you could have legal contracts expressed as these, you could have insurance contracts,
Yeah.
mortgages,
Yep.
everything where you have to have a third party be the arbiter of what's happening between two parties could be represented by these NFTs.
Yes, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of potential. A really good use case that's being experimented with right now in terms of music, and I'm not really deep in the music industry, but there's this notion of artists and promoters, right? So someone may create a work of music, but then there's other folks that actually promote that. You see artists, musicians experimenting with, and I can't remember the artist, but one was like, okay, I'm gonna, now they can put their songs on, like SoundCloud or Spotify, and they can get royalties that way. Well, some artists are like experimenting with, well, what if I give a group of investors or people that are interested in seeing this song do well, NFTs? And part of that NFT drop, I call it a drop, they pay for it. They pay for the NFTs, but once they own the NFT, they're essentially investing in that song long term. So they own the NFT, and every time that song makes revenue from Spotify, SoundCloud, or whatever, part of the agreement is they get 50% of the royalties, 50% of the revenue. So they pay, 1 ETH or $4,000 for an NFT, and by holding that NFT, every time Spotify pays the artist in revenue, they get 50% of that revenue. So that's kind of a really interesting thing, right? That you can have these contracts, and then I could turn around, if I own the NFT, I could sell it to Tyler and get some short-term gain, and now he's got the long-term gain. So every time that music sells, he gets that revenue. So you're seeing starving artists, starving musicians trying to leverage this new technology to get short-term gains on creates of work that are long-term. Yep.
Just wanted to add a comment on that.
Yeah.
I thought this a lot.
Yep.
And I haven't for a long time. Think about if you're Amazon Kingdom. You're terrified of this because this is going to destroy your business model. The whole publishing industry, whether it be music or books, is based on the gatekeeping model. Right? And I wrote and published a book back in 2016. If Amazon sells that book that I charge $12 for, I see $3. Now I created the book, I wrote the book. Now I'm not saying that Amazon shouldn't get a percentage for using the platform, but do they really need $9
Right.
of a $12 asset? It's the same in the music industry. So creative people, the term starving artist came from the fact that they're getting screwed.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And this model of decentralization allows for the elimination of the gatekeeper.
Right.
And that is immensely powerful.
Yeah.
And whoever comes up with the repeatable business model to do that is going to do very well. It's already forming in a number of different ways, but whoever the winners are.
Yep.
It's absolutely fascinating. And again, I think you're one of those, like the whole music industry, gatekeepers are all in Nashville. They got to be terrified of this
Yeah.
as well. All the controllers of publishing.
The other hand, just like Amazon, there's a whole lot of functions that are performed in there that do need to get paid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but it's flip-flop, it's not 75%.
Yeah, they should get paid something.
You actually don't know that. I mean, when it comes down to the dynamics of marketing and who might ever find versus how they get found, may be the most valuable part of what we can do. So you may find you only get $3 or $3 10 times versus them letting you get $1 million. So that's just the point.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Well,
Yeah.
but Amazon's dictating what their share is and what the artist is going to keep, and the whole decentralized model where you remove the middleman, will the market dictate what the artist keeps and what these other parties get? It's just simple supply and demand, right?
Yeah. Well, and with NFTs, I think the power, there's more bargaining power from the artist to dictate that, right? So.
Amazon doesn't do my book. Amazon doesn't market my book. They provide a platform.
Right.
I market it, and if I market it well, I move up the list, and then more people buy it. But everybody's an author these days.
Right.
It's easy to publish a book because the self-publishing tools, whether it's on Amazon or Apple's platform, is super easy to do.
Or Facebook.
Or whatever. Right? So I still have to market the product, and it's the same with I also built an app on iOS. It's the same thing. I put my app out there on iOS. I have to market it. Now Apple for apps is a lot better. They take
30%.
30%. And now they got a thing that they're doing 15%.
Right.
I'm okay with that as a creator, right? But I'm not okay with the 70%, especially since I have to market it.
Right.
So I have
Yep.
a question that maybe you'll address as we go. So art specifically as an NFT, it's a digital option, it's a digital asset.
Right.
We saw in the early days of music with Napster.
Right.
They just ripped it, right?
Right.
They built their own distribution model and nobody was getting money. That got cleaned up in the courts and then they came along and put a distribution system together. But you take a digital object, I can take that digital object, I can make a perfect, pristine digital copy of it, and then I can put an NFT on it. So now the original author has an NFT and I have a derivative and I say, I own this.
Right.
How do you stop that? Who arbitrates that?
Yeah. So I think there's that reverse opportunity to arbitrate and essentially validate copyrights, right?
My work and they put it in NFT.
Right. So,
Somebody else did it, now I got 10.
and the internet, they have quite good systems of that, right, today. So if you just pluck an image from someone else's, site, and you didn't get permission, they have ways to find those images and send letters and ask you to take that image down or whatever. But
Track it down.
right.
In use case, don't they just go see who put it on the blockchain first?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, you have
Slide operation. Yeah. Like I take a bunch of samples and then I
Yeah.
string them together and I say, well, this was originally, even though it's all
Right.
sample.
But I think that's the point of the NFT is to show that you have the original copy so that everybody will be able to see on the ledger that you've made this derivative. And that's great. It's the same piece of work, but it's not the original. It's like a baseball card. Like,
Yeah, it's right, you got a Xerox copy of it and say, I've got an original.
correct.
He can turn his daughter's blockchain example. Right?
I didn't hear that.
It's like an endless chain of
Turn.
issues, right?
But-
You can turn
Any
his
new
daughter's
technologies.
Yes, drawing. My,
NFT.
yep. Yeah, you can take any image and yeah, I think those are great questions. I don't have the answers to those questions. I think we'll see how that goes. But all of this space is so innovative. It's ripe for hype and ripe for scams. Right? Again. You want, if you're purchasing an NFT, you want to make sure the place that you're purchasing it is something that you have confidence in. But people even pull down images from some gallery on that same site and then repurpose those, maybe change them a little bit, and then put them up as their gallery on that same site. So it's definitely something to really dig into if you're interested in investing in these things.
Hey, Tom.
Yep.
I have one question about that you said on the last slide. So when you say someone gets 50% of the profit, like
Right.
they have an NFT and this, like you said it was like a song,
Right.
they get 50% of the profit. How is that profit represented? Is it implicit in how much someone's willing to pay for that NFT, or is the NFT, or do folks implement it as like I have an NFT, which is sort of like a governance token that proves I have ownership, but then there's a companion token that represents like exchange and values imputed into that, and then people exchange that, and that's how you get the profit. So I guess to put it succinctly, is the profit more implicit on like a secondary market, or is it imputed into a token that has the value? Like it's like actual exchanging of tokens is how you realize your profit.
Right. So the token is and again, please someone correct me, but the token is the contract, and the contract says, that you're in a binding agreement with the artist, and every time the artist gets payment, he's going to send it to this wallet that's got a smart contract on it, and then that smart contract is going to issue tokens in the form of ETH or in the form of Tyler coin or whatever to you, and then you would be able to exchange those tokens for USDC.
Okay, so it's in that.
So there's a lot of gray areas there.
In that situation, it's explicit.
Right.
Actually getting some token.
But you're trusting the artist to take those funds from Spotify, SoundCloud, whatever, and process them through that agreement so that everybody gets them. So there is some sort of trust there, to my knowledge. Now, somebody might have a better answer, but
Well, there would be an app that would track
Yep.
all of that and provide visibility and
Yep.
then do the row share calculations, and then you'd be able to see that on the chain.
yep.
So I think, yes, there's some trust, but I think largely if somebody's using the platform, there's a dApp sitting on the DLT, you're going to see all of that.
Yep. And just to broaden that, so there'll be a dApp that could be completely decentralized, but act as the platform, as an Amazon acts as a platform for books, right? Yeah. So, and everyone would have access visibility into that DApp so that they can see things going in and out.
These exist right now. So
Yeah.
these are
Yep.
very large ones.
Yep. So there's a couple of NFT marketplace for art. There's OpenSea. You can go there now with the wallet, with a MetaMask wallet, and you could go and take that picture of my blockchain drawing, upload it, and create a token, an NFT. And then that marketplace allows you to sell it. So you can list your price. When you create it, you can say, you know what, I want to add 5% royalties. So every time it sells to someone, I'm going to get 5%. Now I'm going to list it on the market, and Jackie comes in and buys my wonderful daughter's drawing for 1 ETH, $4,000. Of course it's worth that, right? Of course. But then you turn around, now that you're the proud owner of the most incredible blockchain diagram in existence, and you're going to say, well, I'm going to list it for 2 ETH, right? So you list it on the marketplace for 2 ETH, and someone comes along and buys that. You get everything but that 4% to me. So you sell it for 2 ETH, and, well, let's just say you sell it for 10, and then I would get, 40 cents of that, right? I would get 4%. But then someone else can turn around and sell it for something else. And you see this bubble exploding where you hear, NFTs are selling for millions of dollars. And that's kind of what's happening, is they're getting sold and resold to, people that want to showcase that they have these collectibles. And there's also games out there that are using NFTs, and this one is called Wizards and Dragons. Basically, if you have a MetaMask wallet and you have some Ethereum, you can go and play this game, and you mint an NFT. That NFT will be this dynamically generated dragon or wizard. And if it's a wizard, you can actually stake that NFT to, quote, guard a tower in the game. And you're spending real money, so it's like $500 to mint an NFT on there, plus the gas, which may be $100 or $200. So you might end up spending $700 to just get a little guy, but you can stake it to guard the tower. And by, quote, guarding the tower in the game, you earn tokens. You earn coins that are actually worth value. If you're a wizard, you earn coins guarding the tower. If you're a dragon, you can come and take 50% of that wizard's coins through gameplay. Now, judging by the looks of everyone, you're saying this is not a fun game. But this is kind of the stuff that people are creating. And people are kind of, I think you'll hear, if you haven't heard, these play to earn games. Have you guys heard that concept, play to earn? And using NFTs as a way to provide ownership of a stake in that game, or a presence, right? You could be a player. You could have an NFT that represents loot, right? Played Dungeons and Dragons as a kid. I don't know if you guys ever played that, but you would go through a dungeon and you would open a treasure chest and you could get the Orb of Trip. And it had all the special powers that you could see in the future and see what Bitcoin would be next year, right? Or whatever. But NFTs can represent those things. And if you have one, that could be a unique item. Now, what's really interesting is cross-play. So if you play Roblox, my son's friend, he's 10 years old, and in Roblox, he's got 2 mansions, 20 cars, 40 boats, 3 restaurants, you know, and he's just created this empire in Roblox. But its only value is in Roblox. So with NFTs, it creates this cross gameplay where you may accumulate value in this Wizards and Dragons game, and you can carry that value with you to Wizards and Dragons 2, or Wizards and Dragons 3, or whatever. And that's kind of interesting. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that is NFTs. You know, if you get a wallet, you know, you might want to go to SolSea or OpenSea or one of those and just look around. I do provide some more resources if you want to dive into it. I actually think there's some use cases that, from the business perspective, that's pretty cool. Like, for example, if you're, you know, running a conference, when someone purchases a ticket to a conference, you could give them an NFT. And that NFT acts as their kind of access to that conference. Or I've seen one where this style library for code that makes your website look really nice, they actually sell license models through NFTs. So in order to access that library, you buy an NFT, and then everyone that has an NFT gets access to that code, and then also gets access to the updates of that code. So I think there's some really interesting use cases beyond than what's going on now. But I do see NFTs kind of representing, you know, kind of ownerships of agreements. You know, you may one day have an NFT to your, you know, health club membership or your social club membership, right? And you just show the NFT, and if you ever want to get out of the membership, you just sell the NFT to somebody, right? And it's their problem. So that's NFTs. Any questions? Did I lose anybody? Okay, cool. So when you take all this stuff together, you kind of get all these little ideas into this thing called Web3. Here's a engineer's drawing of what a Web 2 infrastructure looks like on Amazon. So if you wanted to run your own, you know, kind of Shopify platform or, you know, software as a service platform that you're going to interact with multiple users that may want to buy your services to do things, odds are you're looking at drawings like this. And I'm not going to walk through this drawing. I'm not going to ask you to stare too long at this drawing. It's clearly not as good as my daughter's drawing. I mean, you have to agree with that. But basically, you know, there's a lot of thought on, and the complexity here is keeping things up. So the internet by default is a fragile network, right? It is not highly robust, and in some ways that's its strength because it can recover really quickly. But when you're building applications, you cannot trust that the internet's not going to go down. You can't trust this cable to this TV is not going to get severed somehow. So you have to engineer that into your application. You also have to interact with third parties like payment providers, like security providers, like telco networks to send text messages, or email networks to send email. So you have to interact with all of these things for your product. And Web3 is kind of disrupting this model a little bit. So with Web3, here's a drawing of a Web3 kind of model. And not all of them are shaped this way. They can all be shaped different. But you'll notice at the bottom is the blockchain, right? So there is transactions going on to the blockchain. You have some front end that still may be in, a data center somewhere. And then you have kind of these scaling chains like ZK rollups and those things. But basically it's a little bit different because you're leveraging a lot of the protocols in Web3 that we touched on, like the wallets, right? And the security of the network, the visibility of who is doing what at the protocol level. It can reduce a lot of that complexity in a Web 2 system that you have to manage internally. Because if you will, every company that's building a SaaS has to manage something like this to be reliable, scalable, et cetera. A lot of this is very redundant. Whether I'm selling apples or oranges or music, everybody's got to solve the same problems, right? That's why the cloud is here, to reduce that. But with these ideas of the blockchain, of tokens, of NFTs, all of these ideas, it's starting to push down those things like payments and identity to the protocol level, which really reduces the kind of core team's overhead on those very general purpose responsibilities. And to me, that's what Web3 is about. It's like pushing out some of the stuff that frankly, they're problem solved. So why do we have to continue solving them for every single product we build or every single idea? Or why does one company have to solve the same thing as another company's already solved? And that's kind of what I see going on is that's being pushed out. For example, if I have a wallet, I enter my password to that wallet, but that password never leaves my machine. My private keys never leave my machine. Every dApp that I interact with doesn't know what my password is, doesn't even have it encrypted in their database. It doesn't have my private key in their database. They don't know what those things are. Therefore, they don't have the risk of someone hacking into their system and getting my password or getting my private key. Now I've got this identity management system that I did not pay Amazon or Apple or Google to do for, or Facebook, right? You go to these applications and they say, log in with Facebook or log in with Google. Basically what you're doing is you're saying, Facebook has my credentials, Google has my credentials. So if you want to use this service, then Google has my credentials, and if Google gets hacked, then they could break in and use my service. But because Google's so big and all they do is employ engineers, surely they're not going to get hacked. Whereas this process, I have my wallet, now I've got responsibility to keep my secret phrase secure and my private key secure, but the service, all they need to know is my public key and be able to verify that it's me, and then they can let me do stuff. So it reduces a lot of security risk for the decentralized application with that model.
And that's your wallet is an identity, which
That's
is
right.
separate from like the notion of a profile. Like any one of these platforms, you just have the identity within different profiles on which it feeds.
Right, and you could have a profile on the blockchain and just tell the apps to use that, right? And say that's my email, that's my Twitter address, that's whatever, and they can use that. Yesterday coin market cap had a bug. I don't know if any of you guys noticed, and a few of you have, where all of a sudden maybe your Bitcoin was worth, $400 billion or something like that. But that's a service that provides pricing for all of these exchanges. All these exchanges use that. So when they had a bug that upped the price of, Ethereum by $40 billion, now everybody that had assets on any one of those exchanges, they looked on their phone at Coinbase or Gemini, and all of a sudden they were quadrillionaires. Right?
Anybody else buy 3 houses on my?
Yeah. you need to buy some NFTs. Yeah. So that, but again, because everything was public and transparent, super easy to find out where the source of the problem was, right? It's super easy for everyone to find that pretty quickly. So I don't think a lot of people, well, maybe a lot of people panic, but again, it's easy to source, find the source of truth very quickly with open and transparent systems. So, go ahead.
How long did it take for them to find that bug? I mean, because yesterday we were just looking at that, we saw a spike. I mean, how long does it take, how long did it take for them to find it?
Right. So I don't think it got written onto any kind of ledger. So if you had, quote, 3 coins and Coinbase market cap was saying that that's worth $3 million when it was only worth $3. When you transacted those 3 coins on the chain, it's still just 3 coins. So once they adjusted the price, even if you made those transactions, it would still be just the value of the 3 coins.
Sounded like it was something on the user interface layer.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
What you were just talking about, if that, just from a usability standpoint and identity management, if that solves the issue of, I don't know if anybody else gets frustrated with this, but every time you log into your bank account, every time you log into your brokerage account, every time you log into your Facebook account, every time you log into your Google account, you have to pick up your cell phone and verify your identity, and then verify your identity through, it's just a horrible user experience.
Right.
And if that solves that alone makes the whole better place.
Right. Yeah. It's
It's just such a
it's I think it's huge. I think the biggest challenge is getting people to a wallet and letting them understand that now this wallet I have, I'm in charge of my private keys. I'm in charge of my secret phrase. I can't say forgot password, right?
getting people to understand the difference between owning their own identity versus something owning it wrong.
That's correct. Yep. It is huge, and the risk that it mitigates for applications and organizations is incredible. The other one that I think's pretty interesting to think about is in the form of payments. So with these wallets, we can, you can send a Bitcoin to someone in Japan for $3. You can send a Bitcoin to someone in Japan for $3. If you want to send $50,000 in US to someone in Japan through the central bank system, does anyone know how much that would cost?
Depends.
Pretty sure it's not $3.
No,
Probably closer to 75.
depends on your bank,
Yeah.
but the bigger issue with that is, so the banks take 3 bites of the apple, at least 3 bites of the apple.
Yeah.
I run one of my clients is a freelance platform, the company's all freelancers, I should say.
Right.
And they're all over the world. So I send money to Russia, the Ukraine, Uganda, China, right, just pick a random country. I send money to them. And this is the same clients that is developing the blockchain platform. Because the owner's a nomad. He's a German citizen, but domestic freelancers, we just send ACH, because the ACH
Yeah.
system's pretty decent. It's
Yep.
pretty quick. It's 1 to 2 days of flow, no fees. But for foreign payments, we don't send wires direct from the bank. We use payment processors, and we pay them in their native currency. Now, the payment processor takes about 5 to 8% on the currency swap. They take a fee to send the money, and then they sit on it for between 5 and 7 business days.
Right.
And our freelancers are furious. They're like, oh, I get stuff in Slack all the time. Well, you paid me on the 15th and it's the 22nd. I haven't seen my money
Right.
yet. And then when they get it, they're pissed off because it's got a 7% skim on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're just, so we started paying people in the net, we're building on the Harmony
Okay.
network. And we started paying USDC over the Harmony network, and we just pay through the MetaMask. And we got people in whatever country they're in getting their payment in, 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, minutes.
With a fixed $15 gas fee.
Right. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Isn't that the elephant in the room though, cross-border payments? Isn't that the biggest problem to solve out there?
Yeah. There's a lot of problems, but I do think Stellar is making some inroads, and USDC. I watched the congressional hearing, which I included a link to, that has a lot of answers there. But there's MoneyGram that's got kind of offices like Western Union all over the world, and Stellar's partnering with them so that if I want to send money to my family in South America or whatever, I can walk to a MoneyGram, convert US dollars into Stellar. I forget what their token is. And then they send that, and then my family in South America goes into the MoneyGram, and they get it into their regular tender. So.
The biggest challenge we have in building out the architecture for this to make it smooth is regulatory.
Right.
Because the banks are trying, and the governments are trying to build a prison wall around the system. They can't control the blockchain payment methods from the inside, so they're trying to build a prison around it. And the biggest problem we're having is really onboarding and offboarding fiat.
Right.
That's the challenge.
Right.
And we're trying to figure out a way to onboard and offboard fiat. And it's not like these people are being paid where we have to withhold taxes from them. They're all freelancers. Right? So it's just a matter of getting them the payment. But
Right.
the company receives money in fiat, and then onboarding it to USDC, and then getting it to them so they can offboard it into their native currency. Those 2 points of the payment.
Yep. And to that point, with Web3, from an application developer standpoint, if we want to set money in our SaaS application, we would have to work with the bank, work with the ACHs, or work with companies like Stripe now to do that. But the potential of being able to push that to the protocol layer and it set money in digital currency is much easier from a technical management standpoint than dealing with these third parties. Even Stripe's going to charge you 5%, and they provide all these tools, but all those tools are there on the blockchain. If people want invoices, if they want to see receipts, if they want to see, so the protocol is building out a fully decentralized payment system for the internet. So with identity and payments, you start to go from this to this in your application complexity. And there's a lot to unpack there, but to me, that's kind of what I kind of think of when I hear the term Web3, is we're just moving some of these challenges or repetitive things down to the protocol layer, like identity and payments, and I'm sure there's more. And I'm just going to go through some real world use cases, and happy to continue to take questions. This is this DeFi app called Aave, AAVE, on Ethereum's network. And basically, with this application, you can take your coins, whether they're Ethereum or Bitcoin. Well, I don't know if you can do Bitcoin. Any kind of layer 2 coin, you can deposit that into this decentralized application. Let's say we take 1,000 Ethereum. We can deposit that in, and then you can essentially get earn tokens for the fees that people are exchanging their coins on. So you can earn more Ethereum for anyone that's exchanging Ethereum with USDT, et cetera. But you can also borrow that money. Yeah. So you could take out a loan on that deposit. If you deposited 10 Ethereum, then you could take out a loan and commit to a fixed percentage to pay back in 3 years, or a variable rate to pay back. And I think for folks going to banks to borrow money, even with assets, it can be incredibly difficult, right? This can be done in minutes, right? Celsius is another one. You can put Bitcoin on Celsius, earn interest, but also borrow against that in minutes on your phone. Another one is Radium. Radium allows for staking in liquidity pools. So you buy a bunch of Ray and you buy a bunch of ETH and you put it together in a pool and you stake it in this DeFi app. And then anytime someone goes and swaps Ray for ETH or ETH for Ray, you get a reward. And you can compound those rewards, and you can essentially earn interest off of your stake. You still own the coins. The coins are still in your wallet. You just lock them up for them to use to exchange on their system. There's all kinds of risk involved with these things, so it's worth doing the research on that. But these tools are out there. And, I think there's others out there like Olympus. Has anyone heard of Olympus or Wonderland, Time Wonderland? Those go even further down this rabbit hole of finance where you're, working with treasuries and bonds, and, they show 7,000 APR, right? And it is, something to look at. I came away with a value that there's really not a get rich for free thing out there. So if folks are selling that, odds are I would be very skeptical of that. But Olympus, people have said good things. I kind of see that there's a lot of risk there as well. So I would definitely dig in. But these are interesting. These are ways of providing things that you would get services from your bank, and you're getting them electronically, digitally, immediately. What is a savings account for a bank? What kind of percent interest do you get these days? 1%? 2%? 0? So it's kind of interesting. One other use case is called R Drive. If you guys are familiar with Dropbox or Google Drive, there's a blockchain out there called Arweave. Is anyone familiar with Arweave? So Arweave is an interesting technology. Basically, it allows you to store data, and it has an endowment algorithm. So you will pay let's say $2 to store a gigabyte of data, which is more expensive than Amazon, more expensive than Google Drive. But that $2 you pay one time and it's on there forever. Minimum guaranteed for 200 years. But the endowment algorithm takes the predictability of the cost of the hardware to store things and the predictability of a very conservative increase on interest of value. And it basically can project that if you pay $2 for this gigabyte, that gigabyte of storage you can store and that data will be there till the end of time based on those predictability models, which is really cool. So this company, R Drive, yep.
If you wanted to remove that data, are you able to do that, or are they saying it's there?
No, you can't. So it is permanent. It is there forever. Folks in Hong Kong wanted to document a few years ago some of the, things that were going on, and they stored all of their articles and data on the Arweave. And China, who wanted to suppress that information, can't. They can't delete it, can't remove it. So that's kind of interesting. This R Drive project is like Dropbox, but you can use it and you pay once and you store your data. Now, it encrypts it, so it's stored in public, but encrypted. So you pay once to store it, and you can always, as long as you keep your keys, always get it and unencrypt it, but no one else can ever see it. And if you ever want to burn it, you essentially just delete your keys that you used to encrypt it. And that's how you delete data on the Arweave network. Many NFT images are being stored in Arweave now because they know that they can prove that it won't be deleted. So if you create an NFT on OpenSea or SolSea, it's actually writing that image to Arweave behind the scenes. DeSo. So how many of you guys like Facebook, like Twitter, like LinkedIn? Right? Has anyone ever tweeted a tweet and got tagged for misinformation? Hopefully not. But yeah. So there's this company, and there's a lot of these. I just picked DeSo out, but it's a blockchain that has basically digitized Twitter and allows a whole social blockchain to do tweets and likes and diamonds and all these things. But the interesting thing about it is if you want to tweet on this network, you pay a little bit in coin. So you pay to play, right? So you get some DeSo, and then you want to put a tweet out there, you spend a little DeSo. If you want to like something, you can like for free, but if you wanted to diamond something, you can pay 2 cents or 1 cent or whatever, up to $900. If you really like that tweet, you can pay $900 and put 6 diamonds on it or something like that. But it's an interesting idea of using these technologies to bring into social media applications. And another interesting thing about it is each user can have their own social token on the network. So people can invest in you in the network as a user. So if Tyler was in the network and I was in the network, I could go to his creator coin and buy them saying, I got your back, Tyler. And Tyler could do the same for me. And that translates into real money. DeSo yesterday, through all of that stuff, was listed on Coinbase now. So you can buy DeSo on Coinbase. But that's an interesting one to check out. And here's sort of like the screenshot of it. You can see that it looks a lot like Twitter. Now, what's interesting about this is because it's a blockchain and its data is transparent, anyone can go and write a UI to it. So you have multiple people building UIs, and if you're like, this is a crappy UI, you can build another UI to that data and start interacting with it and bring people to your UI. Everything is decentralized. Okay. So Web3, hopefully you guys have a little bit better idea of Web3. I'm sure it's going to change over the years. But I do want to finish up with decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. DAOs are organizations with no CEO, no C-suite management. You're a member, an owner, and a user in some cases. So you could be all three. You could be just an investor or an owner, or you could just, I think if you're a member, you have to be an owner, and you could be just a user. So a lot of these DeFi applications are actually run behind the scenes with DAOs. So there's no CEO. There's no, there's an agreement or a governance on how decisions get made. As a member, you propose a decision, and usually all members vote on that decision. And if the vote is the majority, or whatever that action is that says that it's a green light, then the organization follows suit, and they do that. So driven by smart contracts, and NFTs can be used in here to represent ownership. There's all kinds of ways to configure them, and frankly, it's something to really explore. There's a lot of hype out there that says companies are going to go away and all these organizations are going to replace companies. I don't think so, but there's certainly some people that believe that, and then there's others that say that this is just a way to reduce accountability, right? And kind of not have to be accountable for stuff. But it's an interesting model. It's an interesting model that you can create an organization, and the one that I like to point to is the Constitution DAO. Has anyone heard of the Constitution DAO? Yep. What was their purpose?
It was like fundraising to buy a copy of the Constitution. I think the only privately held one.
Right.
And then if you bought it, then you'd have a governance token, but not ownership.
Right. Yeah. So they formed and raised millions of dollars. They raised millions of dollars to go to this auction where the only private available Constitution was available, and then some rich guy in Colorado swooped them in and outbid them. And then he sent a tweet with the Constitution like sitting on his table or something and said, sorry, I had more money, or whatever. But this organization formed purely to get that Constitution. And then they had laws written in, so you would buy people tokens, and then they had rules, I shouldn't say laws, rules written into the contract, so if they didn't get it, they had an exit strategy. And that's what this screen is. This screen basically says now that we didn't get it, if you want to get your money out, follow this process. And this is how you would go to get the money that you potentially put in to buy the Constitution, and this is how you can get it converted back to Ether. So that's pretty cool. They stood up an organization, got people to fund it, actually bid for something like the Constitution, but then had an exit plan, so if they were not successful, here's how you would reimburse everyone that put their money in. And there was no lawyers involved, no anything. It was all done by code and the blockchain smart contracts. Here's another DAO called the Developer DAO. And literally this one developer on Twitter started it with literally no plans, and over 3,000 developers signed up. They had to mint an NFT, which meant they had to pay $150 or so on Ethereum to join. And then they actually closed it off, so nobody else can join at this point in time. And then they got together and formed a mission and formed values. And it's still early with this one, but they are, really a group, a community that's all virtual. This idea of a virtual community. We're talking about doing a local blockchain meetup. These guys are creating a virtual developer community to do stuff. And that's what DAOs kind of enable, is these, virtual organizations. Any questions about DAOs? Cool. So I've got a lot of links here to share. Again, I tried to provide as much high-level value without getting too technical over these 3 courses. I definitely recommend, if you're interested in learning more but don't want to get super technical, the MIT blockchain course is really good. And the Congress hearing. So last week, it's like 5 hours, and there's some YouTubes that plays the clips, but last week Congress had someone from Coinbase, someone from US DC Coin, Stellar, and some other CEO, Paxos, I think. They had 5 CEOs in this space about Web3. And all these, the finance committee got to ask them questions, and they had some written statements. And number one, they did, I guess there's this thing, can you explain it to me as I'm a 5-year-old? I think, can you explain it to me as if I'm a member of Congress? so they yeah, maybe close to the same. But they had a lot of, easy to understand language, so it doesn't get real technical. The Bitcoin white paper, the Ethereum white paper, the first few pages of those are not super technical, and they're good to read as far as the mission and vision of what they want to do. There's a book called The Bitcoin Standard that's really good to read if you like reading. There's a lot of junk on YouTube. But there's this one lady called Crypto Casey that's just really good about explaining things in 10, 15 minutes. And it's not like invest in this or this. It's more like, here's how you use wallets. Here's how you keep wallets secure. Here's what you need to know about NFTs, kind of thing. And here's 5 things you shouldn't do, kind of tidbits. So you might find that interesting. The Andreessen Horowitz venture capital firm, I'll say it eventually, they sponsor and invest. It's A6Z, I think, but A16Z. They invest in a lot of crypto startups, and they put on a year ago a startup school, the Crypto Startup School, and it's got, 20 videos of these leaders in this space talking as if they're talking to people that's going to start a company. And there's really good ones. One is The Future of Apps by Balajay. the future of apps, where he really kind of paints this Web3 landscape. So that's worth listening to, and there's a bunch of other ones there. There's also Layered Money, the book. Again, that's not an easy read, but it explains the evolution of money since now, from the beginning to now, and you can understand that what we call fiat, how it came to exist, and the actual stability of it. It's not very stable. Note, the Book of Satoshi is pretty good on Audible. It's basically a collection of his emails as he was developing the blockchain. And people would send him emails. What if there was a 51% attack? How would you deal with that? Or what if there was this? How would you do that? And you hear from his genius how he solved a lot of problems. The duplicate spin problem, those types of things. And then there's this centralized China versus the decentralized world. It's a good talk. I think it's with Balajay and Tim Ferriss. If you know Tim Ferriss, it's a good talk. And then Arweave and What is Money is from. So in this space, there's Bitcoin maximalists. And then there's like cryptocurrency minimalists. I don't know. There's a spectrum. And the maximalists are like, everything in crypto is crap except Bitcoin, right? And then there's some that are like Ethereum maximalists, and they're like, everything's crap but Ethereum, right? So there's all of this. And what is money? This guy is a maximalist, and he explains his kind of view. And I think it's good. So hopefully I provided you guys kind of, I showed you the rabbit hole, maybe helped you put a foot in. But if you really want to go deep, here's a list of resources that I think is worthwhile. And they're different for different folks. So some people may prefer books, may prefer audiobooks. Some people may prefer videos, podcasts, kind of things. So they're not all, I wouldn't recommend just taking my word, just going through all of them. I would just review them and pick ones that suit your style of learning. So with that, any questions? Anything that I didn't cover that you want?
So can you make sure you said you're going to send this link out?
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Back to using Google Slides?
Yes, it'll be a PDF. It'll be a PDF in your inbox with a link to this video from Ernest. Yep. Yep.
For the people that participated in the Constitution DAO,
Yeah.
Either their kind of buy-in or their refund, would any of that have been taxed?
So the way I understand tax is, and it's kind of like stock. So if you're familiar with stock, if someone gives you stock, that's value that you got. So you're going to get taxed on that value. So a lot of people that get stock from options, right, they cash it out so they can pay the taxes for it. If you change from one cryptocurrency to another, would be like changing from Apple to Amazon. And the way I understand it, the government considers that as if you went from Apple to cash to Amazon. So any profit you made when you sold that Apple, you're going to be taxed on that. And right now, you're taxed capital gains. Does anyone disagree with me? Yeah.
Yeah, if you do
Short or long?
Short term, it's taxed at the ordinary income rate. If you hold it for more than a year, it's taxed at capital gains rate of 15%.
So,
The crypto assets are treated exactly the same as what you was just saying, the stock assets. So if you bought into the Constitution DAO, whatever you paid in is your basis.
Right.
So if you paid $1, and if you cashed out at $5, you're taxed on $4.
right. Yep.
So do you think that was the goal of the Constitution DAO to buy it and then flip it for a profit?
I didn't dive into if they achieved what they were planning to do.
A lot of people are trying to do it in NFTs.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't want to speak for them, but I think they were a little bit more. I don't know. I should go say. I want to hope. I want to hope that they were going to tour it around the country and let kids see a real version. But I may be making that up. Yeah. But yeah, I think the interesting thing is that DAO had to be set up, and they had to have a plan for if they were successful and a plan for if they failed. And they had to have that beforehand for people to invest. And I think that's what's neat about these organizations is it kind of, we establish a DAO. Well, just like if we establish a startup, we have to formulate a success strategy and an exit strategy, right? And it really makes that transparent. So it really will, over time, make it easier for investors to do due diligence and easy for investors to, buy in and buy out of organizations that are providing value. Cool. Well, any other questions before we close? We're a little early, 10 minutes early, so, yep.
Do you know of anyone in the HR space that is doing something new and interesting?
I know there are. Again, I don't know of anyone that's got like a successful use case that I've seen in the wild, but that doesn't mean that they're not out there. But I do know that, that it's any kind of layered service industry, the blockchain, there are people trying to start disruption in that. So any area, I would say that there's probably someone out there trying to, leverage blockchain technology to disrupt it. Maybe.
Well, I think the best one, they just raised $100 million, one called Brain Trust. It's not HR per se, but it's recruiting.
Yep.
It's sort of a job board like Indeed or whatever.
Yep.
Whatever. And they just raised $100 million. And it's sort of, you participate and you can buy the coin, and it's user owned. It's not owned by a bunch of investors per se. They invested in the token because they think the token's going to go up, but they don't own the business. So I think that's in the HR space. I think that's the one I've seen. It's not really HR, but it's
The platform my client's building has an HR component too, because what we're doing is we're signing up. We built a Slack integration, and it's just using the regular Slack API, and it's so anybody across Slack can put their ending on our platform, which is of course blockchain based, and then people can search our platform by skill set. So they basically keyword their skill sets in, and then hire them as a freelancer. So it's not a, like, I would not call it an aggressive recruiting component per se, because we haven't decided if or how that part of it's going to be monetized. It's more about creating a collaboration hub for freelancers with different skill sets.
That's great, thank you.
Does anyone want to talk about some of the projects they're working on? I know you guys are working with is it Hashgraph? Or Hedera Hashgraph. And it sounds like you're working on a blockchain technology. Is anybody else? Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming out. Really enjoyed it. I hope you guys had a lot of fun. And like Ernest said, we'll send everyone an email with the slides and the link to the video, and also a request to start a decentralization meetup, and be on the lookout for that. But I think Ernest said we'll plan on meeting once a month for lunch, kind of thing. And I won't be talking, I promise you that. We'll have some other folks up here talking and try to have some interesting discussions. But hopefully this answered a lot of questions and gave you a little place to start in this journey. So thank you. Hey.